All right, if you're still joining us, thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to wait just a couple of moments. We still have several people joining live as we speak. See the numbers going up. After those tabletop off, we'll get started. Give everybody about 30, 60 seconds to get ready here to go. All right. Looks like we're starting to stable off here. We'll go ahead and get started today on today's town hall. All right, so again, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to MAD Security's June Town Hall. I'm Adam Starnes, the account manager here at MAD Security, and I'm really glad that you're joining us here today. As always, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be here. Last month, we spent time talking about the importance of selecting the right MSP and MSSP, separation of duties, and why structure matters in your CMMC journey. It was Scott with me last week for both the presentation and the Q&A. You asked some great questions. We followed up afterwards. We appreciate you doing that. Do remember, we will have the Q&A today at the end of this that you'll be able to ask questions live. So submit all of those as we go along. We'll get to them in the order that they came in. Okay, so today we're taking last week one step further, because one of the biggest questions after last month's town hall was, okay, that makes sense. What does that actually look like in the real world? And that's exactly what today's going to be about. Today, we are joined by one of our trusted partners, Pinnacle Business Systems. And Pinnacle has worked alongside MAD Security for some time now, supporting shared clients where MAD Security handles the cybersecurity operations and compliance guidance. Pinnacle handles IT operations, infrastructure, implementation, support, licensing, the hands-on keyboard work. And together, we create a structure that helps organizations stay secure, stay compliant, and actually move efficiently through the CMMC journey. Ben, I'd like to say thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Adam.
Absolutely. And again, Ben and Jaclyn Jones, our GRC lead here at MAD Security, will both be joining us for that live Q&A. So I do want to say stick around. You'll be able to ask questions to either party whenever we do get there. All right, so we'll go ahead and move along today. So before we talk about what good looks like, let's actually start with the opposite, because not every MSP, MSSP relationship works well. And when they don't align, things get delayed, communication breaks down, responsibilities become unclear, and ultimately the client feels pain. So Ben, without naming anyone specifically, what have you seen in situations where an MSP and a security or compliance provider just weren't aligned? What did that look like operationally, and how did that impact the client?
Sure. So, yeah, we've recently, Pinnacle and MAD stepped in to help out a client in this type of situation. They had an MSP, an MSSP, and then even an additional compliance consultant all involved. No one was aligned. It created real operational friction. Had a lot of different vendors stepping on each other. There was confusion about who owned what. It caused a lot of delays in their implementation because everybody was making a lot of assumptions. No one was validating what was going on, keeping everyone on the same page. The client really got stuck in the middle trying to manage and chase down answers. Audit stress was going up as they were really in a crunch to meet an assessment deadline. The client was really outside of their comfort zone. They ended up trying to quarterback everyone themselves. And Pinnacle and MAD stepped in together to help the client get everything in place. And in the end, they were successful in passing their assessment.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen that a few different times. And like you said, luckily we were able to get it all worked out. But yeah, I liked what you said about the client ends up trying to quarterback everyone themselves, because we've seen that time and time again, and just a bad place to be in. So yeah, I definitely agree with you there. All right. So, we spoke about this a little bit just now on that last slide. And that all is exactly what we're looking to avoid, of course. When this is done correctly, the client should not feel caught in the middle, like we spoke about. It should feel coordinated, structured. It should feel very simple. The client should not feel like they're constantly working to keep things running smooth. That's just miserable for the client. They shouldn't have to do it. It's not what they're paying for the service for. So from your side, what does good collaboration between an MSP and MSSP actually look like?
Sure. So, good collaboration, starts with clear communication and well-defined responsibilities. Both teams coordinate regularly, share an understanding of the client's goals, and respect each other's lanes. You see joint meetings with the client, which leads to less confusion and stronger accountability across the board. Overall, the client should feel like everyone is rowing in the same direction.
Yeah, absolutely. You said that there very well as well. Rowing in the same direction. Whenever not everybody's on the same page, we see one team's doing this, the other team's doing the same thing. They're duplicating efforts, or they're doing something opposite that's opposed to one another. We've definitely seen it done before, and definitely whenever everybody's on the same page, whenever teams are used to working with each other, it makes a huge difference with the clients.
Yeah,
I mean, I totally agree with you, Ben.
sure.
So let's use a real world compliance example. A client may be going through virtual compliance manager meetings with MAD Security. By the way, if you're not familiar, VCM or virtual compliance manager meetings, it's basically just what we call the consulting for CMMC readiness, how to meet the controls. I was giving you advice, advising on what to do to prepare for that C3PA audit. So during that process, our GRC team may identify missing controls, improper configurations within the client's environment, or technical changes that are needed for compliance. But MAD Security is the advisory and validation focused piece of that. We're not the ones logging into the systems and making changes ourselves. We're not hands-on keyboard. That's where
Mhm.
our MSP would actually come in. So Ben, what does that process actually look like? How does that usually work from your side?
Yeah, yeah. So, at a high level, our from our side, the process is pretty straightforward. Matt identifies the issues, and Pinnacle reviews the technical requirements to understand exactly what needs to be done. Pinnacle's going to implement or make the configuration changes, implement the appropriate solutions. MAD follows up by validating the compliance. We have shared meetings to keep everyone aligned, which leads to faster remediation and better client clarity, strong documentation alignment. Overall, it's a clean, predictable workflow. It keeps the client out of the weeds.
Absolutely. And what Ben just mentioned, keep the client out of the weeds. Most clients want that. They want to be out of the weeds. They just want to know that it's covered, that everything's done properly for them. Let me also say this. Maybe you like to be in the weeds. Maybe you like to be involved in that. The cool thing about having somebody like a Pinnacle MAD security relationship is we're so used to working with each other and knowing what to do so that it's seamless for the client. It feels like it's one solution because it is one solution, just in separate walls from that point. Um, and we're going to customize the experience to be exactly what it is to meet your needs from that point. We're not just a one solution. You've got to do it this way from that point. We're going to work to collaborate with you to determine exactly what it is that you need. You'll have it all. We'll talk about separation of duties here in a minute, but you'll have it all laid out, like who's responsible for what with the shared responsibility matrices and so on, so that you have a clear understanding on who owns what. So definitely. Everybody still stays in the lane. We know what's our lane. We know what it is that you need done. We know how to work together. Stay in our lane. Stay aligned. Definitely agree to that. Okay, so right there is one of the biggest reasons we talked so much last month about separation of duties. We just mentioned it. I said we'll get to it here in just a moment. One party in this example advises, monitors, validates. Another implements, configures, executes, and then the work gets independently checked afterwards. It gets validated that it was done in a compliant fashion. And that creates accountability, validation, and audit defensibility. What we've seen before is some people try, they're like, man, this company that I'll work with, they just do it all for us. And while that can work for some people, what might be kind of different here is, for instance, if you get somebody advising, monitoring, and validating, then the other person's and then the same person's also implementing, configuring, and executing, then that check piece is where that checks and balances and separation of duties gets a little gray, because it is checked, but it's checked by the people that did the work. So that's why we talk about know the roles, everybody stays in the lanes. That's one of the benefits of separating the duties. Ben, from your side, why is separation beneficial?
Separation is going to reduce risk and strengthen resiliency. It allows for distinct management and security oversight, and as you mentioned, providing those checks and balances. It improves accountability and audit clarity. The MSPs focus on operations, while the MSSPs handle the cybersecurity and ensure fewer oversights and stronger cybersecurity posture. The separation allows each provider to concentrate on their core competencies, which leads to improved service quality and efficiency. The organizations focus on what they do best, which benefits the customer. And furthermore, it provides clear delineation, helps reduce the regulatory compliance, and simplifies communication.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, definitely beneficial. Again, I've seen people try to do it all
Mhm.
in one house before, and it's worked for some. But whenever you can separate that out, that's great. And then being able to separate it out with people that are used to each other makes it even easier to do so. So that's just kind of a benefit of having an MSP MSSP combo that's both
Mhm.
familiar with the client and both familiar with CMMC, because everybody here today, I'm assuming, is going to have some sort of CMMC requirements or plan to have some in the future. So these are just things to think about whenever you're deciding on who you're going to work with going forward. Okay, so let's use another practical example of this separations of duties. In many environments, MAD security may be handling the vulnerability management or the vulnerability scanning and reporting. So we identify missing patches, outdated systems, vulnerabilities, severity levels, updates that need to be done. But again, MAD security is not doing the patchwork ourselves.
Mhm.
Ben, when the vulnerabilities are identified, what does that process typically look like operationally?
Sure. So on the Pinnacle side, in our CMMC aligned vulnerability management process, as you mentioned, Matt's going to identify and report the findings. Pinnacle analyzes the impact on those systems and applies patches or other remediation actions in coordination with the client through their established change control procedures. Then MAD performs the validation rescans. Full documentation trail is maintained to ensure traceability and accountability at every stage, so that again, we have good, clean lines and a process that help take care of the customer, meet the needs, address the vulnerabilities.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, to simplify it for you, like I mentioned, the example in the slide previous, if you're listening today, want to kind of get a little more understanding about that checks and balances, that's
Mhm.
exactly it. We'll actually find the vulnerability. The report will be over. The severe vulnerabilities, Pinnacle will take a look at, and then they'll actually do the hands-on keyboard. They'll do the patching. They'll do whatever is required
Mhm.
for that to be taken care of. Mad Security goes back and runs a scan behind that, and we're like, yeah, hey, you knocked it out. Awesome. Or, hey, that one didn't quite work, didn't stick. So now we're back there
Yeah.
behind and you're no longer left vulnerable. That's the benefit of having that checks and balances system. Where that might become a problem, it may not, but where it may become a problem for somebody that's trying to do it all in house. Um, what you typically see is a company would do the vulnerability scan, then they go do the patchwork. Nobody kind of checks behind it from that point.
Mhm.
And that's just an example of why it's important to have that separated and how that checks and balances is beneficial in a lot of cases for clients.
Yes, I totally agree.
Yeah, so now let's talk about real world security operations.
Mhm.
If MAD Security SOC identifies suspicious activity, like MAD Security SOC SIM, we monitor, we detect, we investigate, escalate appropriately. Basically, not to dive too deep into that, but we have a playbook here at Mad Security that says if we investigate this and it appears that it could actually be a threat, depending on the severity level, we will send a ticket or we'll make the phone call. We'll escalate it appropriately depending on the threat. But depending on the client structure, we may contact the client, we may contact their MSP, or both. So
Mhm.
from your side, what's happening operationally once those alerts come in, Ben?
Sure. So, we have staff 24/7 that is there to respond. We get the SOC triggered alert. Pinnacle's going to investigate the affected system, asset, endpoint, cloud environment, etc., to determine whether that activity represents a legitimate threat or if it's a false positive. If it's a false positive, we let you guys know. We make tunings happen so that doesn't occur again. If it is legitimate, then we go in and start remediation actions. We coordinate and engage with MAD throughout that process. Once we get that addressed and closed, MAD validates that the threat has been fully resolved. Um, you know, it all takes place collaboratively and avoids overlap with a clear document trail.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, huge checks and balances. You're getting your full solution covered. It's just the fact that it's separated out on who's doing it for you.
Mhm.
Something else I would like to spend just a quick moment on. I wasn't planning on going over this today, but it just dawned on me just for a moment that we're talking about how MSPs and MSSPs collaborate and spread out the separation of duties and why it's important to have MSP and MSSP combos that are familiar with one another and how we make it seamless. But it dawned on me just for a moment that a lot of our viewership is somebody that's thinking about CMMC for the first time. So let me mention this this way, for instance, just in case you're joining us for the first time, just in case you're new to this CMMC journey. The reason we're talking about what happens with like vulnerability management, what happens with SOC and the security operations, you may
Mhm.
be sitting there thinking to yourself right now, like, okay, what does it have to do with CMMC? So these are different pieces of the CMMC controls that you're going to have covered. For instance, a lot of people use the SOC SIM to cover the audit and accountability controls or parts of them to fulfill those controls. Vulnerability management, you do need a vulnerability management solution to actually fill those controls. Um, we talked about like the separation of duties. We talked about the shared responsibility matrix. And, part of CMMC is actually documenting who's responsible for what and being able to map how this control is met, show evidence for it, have it documented and speak to it. So the reason we're spending so much time today talking about these things, you may be hearing this and thinking it's more of a cybersecurity thing, and it is, because in the end, CMMC is to make sure that you do have a robust cybersecurity environment protecting CUI um, from enemies of our nation, basically. So I just wanted to go back real quick and talk about why are we talking about these types of things and how we work together in these instances.
Mhm.
And if you're a CMMC, um, if if you're here in the beginning of your CMMC journey, I just wanted to explain how this relates because I know that was probably a big part of why you joined us today. So sorry to go down that rabbit hole if you weren't expecting that. Just wanted to kind of put that out there for anybody joining us for the first time today.
Great.
Okay, so let's go on to talking about specialization. One thing that we both strongly believe in is specialization. You typically think MSPs as IT, infrastructure, licensing, implementation, MSSPs as cybersecurity, operations, um, monitoring, compliance guidance. And while there's an overlap in communication, the actual responsibilities are different oftentimes. So, Ben, why is specialization so important instead of just trying to make one team do everything?
Yeah, it is important. It allows each person, brings a different skill set. They have different focus areas, different mindsets. A SOC analyst isn't going to be worried about how do I build something in SharePoint or how should I configure my server or workstation to do a certain task. They're worried about, hey, how do I find and detect and investigate this incident? the same way with a Microsoft guy or a network engineer, etc. So it really allows IT operations versus the security operations teams to do what they do best. It leads to greater efficiency, deeper expertise, stronger audit readiness. You have easier scalability and ultimately a better outcome for the client. And like I say, you really want the experts focused on what they do best.
Absolutely. Totally. One thing that I like to share with someone when they're talking to Mad Security for the first time, we deal with a lot of very smart people, a lot of companies that have their own internal IT teams, maybe even their own internal cybersecurity or compliance teams. And basically, a lot of people have the walls up at first whenever we're having those conversations, like um, maybe even a little defensive sometimes. Like, yeah, I know what I'm talking about. Don't talk to me like that. And we never want to come across that way to anybody. The reason being is because you are, if you're listening to this today and that's you, you're very tech savvy. You're very smart in what you do from that point, but you probably have something that you're specialized in that you're really good at. So
Mhm.
what our people are focused at is CMMC related compliance and security operations and IT, and making sure that it's covered from a CMMC perspective. So what we do is just come in with a specialization of how to do these things in a CMMC fashion, the same way that you wouldn't go to your local dentist with the earache to have it checked out from that point. They're both extremely intelligent people, different specializations. One goes to the other for exactly what they need. So just wanted to put that out there as well. If you're listening to this today and you're like, hey, I can figure it out, or is that you probably could figure it out. But where you um, benefit from engaging with
Yeah.
someone like Matt and Pinnacle is that you don't have to spend countless hours, days, weeks trying to figure everything out, months actually doing it and implementing it. You're going to somebody that specialized in it, that's done it before. And that's why specialization definitely matters. Same thing if you're looking at different MSSPs and MSPs and you start talking to them about what's your experience in CMMC. You talk
Sure.
to somebody that's like, man, we've taken 20, 40 companies um, through a C3PAO audit so far. We've assisted with that many. And then you talk to somebody that says, hey, we're really smart guys. We can figure it out. You want to go with the people that said, man,
Mhm.
we've done it before. That's our specialty. And that's just what to keep in mind whenever you're shopping around and looking for somebody saying, does that specialization really matter? Well, something like CMMC, it does. 110 controls, 320 objectives to pass the C3PAO audit, perfect score required. Um, People always come back to that and say, man, I heard you can score 88. It's like, well, yeah, you can not miss any of the 5 and 3 point controls and poem a few ones, but in the end, you got to have that perfect score. So that's
Mhm.
exactly why specialization matters.
Definitely.
So let's talk about what this kind of looks like from a client perspective. The we talked about in the first one or two slides that we went over, like from a client perspective, they don't want to manage chaos. They want simplicity. End of the day, they want to be able to say, hey, I'm paying you guys to do this. Can you get this done? Make it as little of a lift on me as possible. We talk about what value is all the time. And what the value is like, hey, what's my likelihood of success? And, how much is, and is this going to give me what I want? And then how much time is this going to cost me? How much effort is this going to cost me?
Mhm.
And in the end, we want to make sure that we make it as simple, as stressless as possible, to take as little of your time as possible and still get you where you want to go. And we definitely know that we can, get you across that success finish line. So sure, the end client will have to be involved some because there are decisions that have to be made from a company level. CMMC ownership, the client has to be involved in, and uh, they have to be making decisions. They have to own the documentation and so on. But when
Mhm.
the relationship is functioning well, what should the client experience actually feel like?
Sure. So when both providers are working well together with the client, the client experience should be seamless communication. There should be, feel clear ownership at every step along the way. Uh, Issues get handled faster. There's less stress. Um, there's no finger pointing back and forth, just coordinated action. I that is a struggle for a lot of organizations, even internally when they try to do stuff. But that perfect picture, really the result is greater confidence, smoother operations, easier audit prep and processes. It all should feel like everyone is a unified team in that whole process. No stovepipes.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with you for sure. Definitely should just feel just like a unified team, and that's what you're going to get with somebody that's used to working together for sure. Um, okay, so let's talk about this. What are some of the biggest mistakes that organizations make when they're
Hmm.
trying to handle, trying to structure IT security and compliance for CMMC?
Sure. And wow, we sit down and talk with clients all the time that have tried to start down this journey. I'd say that one of the biggest mistakes regularly see is, they're waiting too long to get the right pieces in place, and the right personnel, processes, et cetera, together. They try to do everything internally without proper expertise. Like I say, you usually find the IT guy that's trying to lead the whole effort across compliance, and he's the server workstation guy. He's the one IT guy in the company. Um, so, sometimes they're working with the wrong provider. There's no consistent communication cadence, which creates gaps. And above all, they underestimate how complex the implementation of a CMMC compliant environment really is. Like I say, that IT guy, it hadn't even crossed his mind that, hey, he needs to worry about what his HR and background check process is, what the physical security controls are. Yeah. Oh, I have to have this whole policy deck over here. Yeah, they don't think about that. That's not in their mindset. But yeah, that's where I see the biggest issues is, most problems start just due to unclear structure.
Yeah, 100%. Totally agree with you. It's right on what I was thinking as well. Okay, so let's talk about one more thing real quick. Then guests that are with us today, we are going to be moving on to the Q&A here soon. So remember, go ahead and be submitting those questions. We've got so one more thing to talk about. We'll be moving on to that live Q&A so that we can talk to you directly. So Ben, we both know after doing this for a while, this isn't just about passing the audit. It's
Mhm.
about maintaining security, compliance, documentation, processes, validation, long term.
Mhm.
So from your experience, what separates organizations that sustain compliance well from those that struggle later?
Sure. So, organizations that sustain compliance over the long term are the ones that build consistency into their daily operations. They have process discipline, they have strong communications and proper documentation. Nothing is really left to chance. Um, they conduct regular reviews and maintain clear accountability. Uh, uh, they approach compliance in a proactive mindset instead of a reactive mindset. Overall, the organizations that do treat compliance as an ongoing program, um, not just a one-time project, are the ones that really are successful and are in it for the long haul. That is again one of the bigger hurdles that I see. Uh, they go through and, okay, well, we've built all of this and I don't have to worry about it anymore. I've spent my X amount of dollars to bring my organization or some little enclave up. Great, I'm done. No, it's a week to week, month to month, day to day, even in some cases, process to keep it there so that uh, you maintain compliance. And that's usually another big eye opener to the company is that level of effort and the potential operational costs and other things that go along with that.
Yeah, we could go on about that a whole webinar just on that itself. From that point, we talk to people every week that they're like, man, I'm going to spend this money, I'm going to get across that finish line, and then I'm cutting these off. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, don't cut the service off. You want to keep doing these things, because at the end of the day, like we talked about, it's about securing the CUI from the enemies. We're either doing work for, if you're doing CMMC, you're either doing work for the DoD themselves, or you're within that supply chain of defense somewhere.
Sure.
There's a lot of people that are like, yeah, this doesn't matter what we have. Man, if it's in your contracts,
Mm-hmm.
if it's flow down, that's a part of that puzzle, right? So letting it go after you're done, after forgetting about compliance after you pass, it's not something that you can leave sitting there from
That's right.
now to 3 years from now, and you have to recertify and just pick it back up and pass again. You're going to have revisions, changes, people leave the company, processes change, tech stacks change. Man, just so much can go on. So we definitely recommend to everybody, even after you pass, you get that perfect score, SPRS 110. Don't think of it that way. Think of, if I'm doing business with the Department of Defense or the Department of War or anywhere in that supply chain, and I plan on continuing to do so in the future, I urge you now, stay with it. Have somebody manage compliance, whether it be somebody, if you're doing it internally, continue to do so. If you have an MSSP and an MSP combo doing the work for you, keep them. If you got a third party managing your compliance, just keep it up to date. I urge you that.
Yes.
Right now. We've already seen people that they passed an assessment and made a major change, didn't
Mm-hmm.
realize that would trigger a reassessment,
Sure.
and it did, and they let some other things go too, right? So that had a lot more
Mm-hmm.
legwork to do once it came there, and it's just because they didn't have that expertise. They let it go after passing for the first time.
Sure.
So
I've
definitely
seen
a lot of
that.
benefits.
Yeah, I was chatting with a customer just the other day. They're like, okay, well, we can go do all this, and then great, we'll sign up with you guys for, I don't know, a year, and then we're just going to drop all that, and Bob and Sam over here in IT, et cetera, are going to go take care of everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, that's fine in a sense if you can still maintain everything, address all the requirements, but that's a huge lift, and maintaining separation and all the other pieces that go along with that. So yeah, that again, it's that eye opener to the business of, oh wow, I do have to budget for this larger additional cost on an ongoing basis.
Absolutely. And I totally get it. I'm not here today to advocate for the government or something, but I had somebody ask me the other day, why don't they pay us extra for this? If you want to know, the government's answer is we've put an increase in the proposals and things to cover it from that point. So, according to them, it's not going anywhere. So definitely prepare for it, stay with it, um, stay on top of it, make it a lot easier for you for those yearly attestations and recertifications. All right. Well, that is
Right.
going to bring us. I appreciate you making it with us this far so far today. This is the live Q&A portion. We do have a couple of questions that are already in. Would like to go ahead and go through these here. Yep, got several here, so go ahead and keep those coming in. We're going to spend us about 7-8 minutes going over as many questions as we can. If we cannot get to your question before we end, we will follow up with you by either phone or email. So please ask as many as you want to. We will follow up with you from that point. So again, I'm joined by Ben from Pinnacle today, as well as we do have Jaclyn Jones from MAD Security's GRC team. She is the GRC lead here at MAD Security. So you're going to be able to answer or ask questions to either or both. And we'll go ahead and get started so we can get as many of these knocked out as we can. So just a moment, I'm going to pull them up in order as they came in. All right. So this could be for either of you. Let's start with Jaclyn on this particular one. And then Ben, if you have something to add, we can. It wasn't addressed either way. So Jaclyn, do I have to use both an MSP and an MSSP to achieve level 2 compliance?
So not necessarily. So everyone's different. Every company, there's no one fit solution for everybody. The important thing is you have a lot of requirements to meet. There's 110 controls, 320 objectives, and someone who has the skill set and the knowledge to implement those controls the correct way the first time is really what you need to focus on. Something that we have seen common is people have internal to IT staff and they, have good intentions. They think they can get everything done themselves. But as you know, everyone wears many hats usually. They have their daily jobs, their daily job duties and things like that. People go on vacation. There's, job changeover, things like that. And so they may think that they understand the requirements and they, start implementing and then they realize that maybe they've done it the wrong way and they have to backtrack. And so there's rework, unnecessarily complications. Your timeline gets pushed out. You're already under a short timeline anyway. You kind of feel the stress, things like that. So not necessarily, right? So it's what is best for your company. And MSP, someone who like Adam and Ben have been saying, who they specialize in CMMC, they can get it done right the first time. There's no rework. They help you. They have got that knowledge and expertise. So that's what I was focused on. Just make sure that someone who understands the requirements is who's doing it.
Sure. Yeah. The important thing is making sure all the responsibilities are covered properly there. Again, I get asked that question quite a bit as well. You can use two different ones. You may have one provider that can do it all if they've got separation and the capabilities to do those things. But you kind of want that, clear separation between operations and the security compliance piece through whichever method you choose to use.
Absolutely. All right. We'll move on to the next one to keep them rolling here. Ben, this one was addressed towards you. It says, Ben, how do you avoid duplicate services between an MSP and an MSSP?
It goes back really to, understanding clear lanes and lines of responsibility. Pinnacle and MAD do have some overlap in some of the things that we do. And, we, again, just like I mentioned earlier, talking about separation, is clear communications, clear lines of responsibility, who's doing what. Get that laid out, open communications. We all work together as a team.
Absolutely. I'll actually jump in and add a little bit to that as well. Just like you said, we at MAD Security have partners that do similar things to us and vice versa. We do similar things to some of our partners. And wherever the partner needs that gap filled in at, if that's something that we do, then we're happy to, to assist in any way to fill in the gap. The nice thing about both Pinnacle and MAD Security is there's a lot of places you're going to call up and they're going to say you're going to buy all of our services or you're going to buy none of them. And whenever you come to us, we're going to talk to you about what your needs are, what your gaps are, and we're not going to force something on you and say you got to take all this or nothing from that point. We're going to assist you wherever you're missing something at. Because in the end of the day, nobody's happy if we're sitting here trying to force stuff that you don't need from that point. That's not what we're here for. Sure, we love your business. Would love for you to come get all of our services if you needed them. But at the end of the day, to make you happy to fulfill what you need, in return for us to be able to fulfill what we promise you, we only want to give you what you need from that point. So we're going to partner with the partner, even if there's overlap. It's just whatever that need is for sure. So no, love the answer, Ben, for sure. We answered, we're going to skip past this one because it said what happens after we achieve CMMC. We talked about that a little bit. We're going to get back to you by email on that particular question just because I want to get to another one here before we move on to the last slide. But there are about 3 others here that we'll get to. We're going to finish one more live. We'll reach out to the rest of you by email or phone, but please continue to submit them while we're talking because we've got a lot of questions here and we want to keep them going. But this last one here, let's see, either of you can answer this one from that point. So how involved does my company need to be during the compliance process? Jaclyn, since you lead GRC for our team, maybe you want to start with that one?
Sure. So at the end of the day, the organization's ultimately responsible for their compliance statute, whether you've got whatever third parties you hire, anything like that. So you need to be very actively involved in the process, whatever they're doing on your behalf. Make sure that they're doing the right things. They need to give, if it's an external service provider, you need a customer responsibility matrix. Anything that a third party is doing on your behalf, they may have to attend the assessment interviews with you to show evidence live to the assessor, to the C through PAO. So certain things you can outsource like that. Other things, though, there are certain controls around, hiring, onboarding, offboarding, employee transfers, the marketing, posting content on public websites, things like that. Those are usually more internal than external. So it's not really a hands-off approach. I can outsource everything. So again, you're accountable at the end of the day, whether someone's doing something on your behalf. It's ultimately your CMC certification assessment. So you need to kind of do a check, make sure they're doing the right thing.
Sure. And there's, as Jaclyn mentioned, there's a lot of things that I'll say are outside the IT realm, because that's normally the blinder focus that organizations have is, oh, this is just an IT thing. There's much more than that, but that doesn't mean we just toss it over the fence and hey, good luck with that. We're right there in the trenches with you. Pinnacle and MAD, hey, here's some things you should think about in your onboarding process, the background process with your HR personnel, etc. Here's some things you should think about in how you track, log, monitor, manage physical security. It's not necessarily an IT thing, but we're giving you that guidance along the way. So it's not like you are out on an island stranded by yourself trying to figure these things out. And that's one of the great things about the way our two organizations work with our customer base. And that seems to be what the customers love about that is, hey, we're right there step by step in lock with you.
Absolutely. 100% agree. No, thank you, Jaclyn, and thank you, Ben. Great answers today. Again, thanks for all the questions that we have. We've got more that we're not able to get to today, but I do have two more things that I need to cover with you before we leave here today. So please bear with us. If you did not get the answer to your question, we will shoot it back over to you here right after. Okay, so I'd like to move on to the giveaways for today. We do have the free pre-assessment. This is going to be 31 questions that you answer yes, no, not sure. That's going to give you a pretty good idea on if you're actually ready for a C3PAO assessment or not. We do have the free CMMC master bundle, everything from CMMC enclaves for your CUI, all the way to how to approach an assessment. We actually have the assessment guide, which actually gives tips on preparing for and going through the final C3PAO assessment. And then as well as we do a free consultation, you can actually use my booking link or give me an email and we can put some time on the calendar. Of course, Ben from Pinnacle Business Systems would be more than happy to have a conversation with you as well. Sure. So please reach out. We can get you any contact info that you need there also. That way you could talk to us about your total solution, whether if you think you may need just MAD or just Pinnacle or both. If that's okay, let us know. We'll be able to talk to you, find out exactly what your needs are, because again, what our goal is just to make sure that we can find a way to fill in the gaps of what it is that you're exactly looking for.
Great.
And then I will say thank you again so much for joining us today. If there's one takeaway from today, it is this: CMMC is not just about the tools. It's not about hiring a company and saying, here, handle everything. It's about building the right structure and the right team. What we consistently see work best is strong communication, clear accountability, separation of duties, specialization, and partners who work well together. If you are interested in learning more about how MAD and Pinnacle can partner with you and your company to achieve your IT, cybersecurity, and CMMC compliance needs, contact me here at MAD Security to schedule a short 20, 30-minute intro call. No obligation at all. We can discuss what you're currently doing, where you might could use some assistance, and see if and how we might be able to assist you. If so, if we find out there's something we can assist you with, great. We can talk about next steps. If not, that's okay too. We'll shake hands. We'll point you in the best direction that we can. no obligation whatsoever. So thank you so much again, Ben from Pinnacle, for joining us here today and sharing real world insight today. And thank you all for joining us here on the town hall as well. Thank you for Jaclyn for joining us here for the Q&A. We appreciate you here for Mad Security and Pinnacle, and we'll see you next month. Thank you so much. Everybody have a great rest of your Thursday.
Thank you. Have a great day.